All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3 o'clock, so let's get started. Thank you all for joining us today for the International Love Data Week webinar series. This session is facilitated by Dr. Yiren Kong. Dr. Kong is an educational research and grant development specialist in CELT. For those of you who are not very familiar with CELT, CELT is the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. Dr. Kong is going to talk about CELT's journey conducting educational research on active learning classrooms. If you have any questions throughout the session, please leave them in the chat. And then without further ado, I'll hand it over to Dr. Kong.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And everyone, welcome to my session today. So basically, just like Lynn introduced, I'm going to share a little bit about our research journey around the topic of active learning classrooms, also known as ALC. And it is indeed a data-informed journey. So before I dive into the presentation, I want to briefly introduce myself and also the department I'm working in right now. So hopefully that can give you some context for you to better understand why we are doing what we are doing right now. So as Lynn said earlier, my name is Yiren Kong, and I'm an educational research specialist with CELT. That is Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And I'm pretty sure most of you have had, worked with CELT before. So CELT primarily offer services in terms of instructional support to our faculty members. And in the meantime, we also value the importance of educational research and empirical data. And we believe that that is like the backbone and also the foundation of the service we offer here at CELT. So for that very reason, I was brought onto the the CELT team back in 2022 just to spearhead research projects of different kind based on the needs and interest from across the campus. So ever since then, we've been working on topics such as innovative technology. I've worked closely with my colleagues Jenny Zhang and Luis Colon, and we've been trying to see different ways that we can apply innovative technologies such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence into classrooms, and we're also trying to measure its effectiveness. And another example would be the research project spearheaded by my colleague Kimberly Bell. So Kim had been trying to investigate how online teaching training program might impact TA's teaching competency. And of course, we have the main project of ALC, and I'm gonna talk more about that today. So I usually work closely with my CELT team members, but at the same time, I also collaborate with faculty members and the staff members across the campus. So here's just an example. I actually worked a lot with Dr. Tina Abate, who is a clinical assistant professor at School of Nursing, and she's an amazing educator, and she is also very interested in educational research, especially in active learning and micro learning. So we actually worked together a lot, and we submitted conference proposals, and we are right now writing a paper together. So there have been different ways we share our data, share the results from our data analysis. And sometimes it can be internal meetings here at Stony Brook University. So we will just share our findings with different stakeholders. And sometimes we will share our findings at educational conferences. And sometimes it's just in the format of journal articles so that we can reach for a larger audience. And speaking of journal, here is a quick advertisement. So CELT's official educational journal, International Journal of Transformative Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, also known as IJTTL, just published its very first issue. So IJTTL is, first of all, it's free, and it is an international peer-reviewed open access and interdisciplinary educational journal committed to advancement of higher ed teaching and learning. And the first issue covers a wide range of topics such as health inequities, virtual exchange programs, artificial intelligence, and more. So if you want to read the first issue, or if you want to submit your own work to us, feel free to go on our website. That is commons.library.stonybrook.edu/IJTTL, or you can just reach out to me and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. Um, and I promise that's the only advertisement I have for the day. Okay, so here's a little disclaimer for the presentation today. So the research journey I'm going to share with you folks is by no means exemplary. So, my research plan, always I hope for the best. So it's from point A to point B, and I'm hoping for a straight line, but what actually happened could be really messy or sometimes even chaotic. And that could be due to changes of research objectives, or sometimes we just ran into a roadblock. Um, so I just hope that the experience I'm going to share today can be something inspirational for you to contemplate on your own research journey. And the focus of our of today is on ALC and active learning. And for those of you who are not familiar with the two things, so basically ALC is defined as learning space that is specially designed to optimize the practice of active learning and amplify its positive effects in learners. And here you can see two pictures, and they are um, active learning classrooms on campus, and one is Jarvis 106, the other one is Harriman 206. And as you can probably see from those pictures, they share some commonalities. So they come with a lot of movable furniture, the chairs, the tables, and there are also, movable whiteboards. And at the same time, they also come with different kind of, technology like multiple screens, across the room. And also we have the overhead projector. The same thing here. We have a, TV screen here in Harriman Hall, and on the other side of the room, which we cannot see here, they have another screen there as well. So basically, all those features just serve one purpose, which is to encourage active learning in those learning spaces. And when paired with appropriate active learning strategies, the active learning classrooms are designed to engage students actively and effectively in the learning process and improve their learning experience and performance. And this belief has been shared among CELT, classroom technology and support, and also several other stakeholders across the campus. And we have been working diligently as a group to promote the creation and the use of more active learning space on campus. And as part of that effort, we are also trying to collect empirical data that is contextualized to the SBU context and use that to inform our decision making. So the driving force for this research project is really trying to understand the active learning space and trying to answer the fundamental and the core question, and that is, does ALC work? So we have this overarching question, and there are so many things that we are interested in. For example, how do instructors and students think of those learning spaces? How and how frequently certain learning activities happen in those learning spaces? And what about learning outcomes? How do those learning spaces affect students' learning performance? So we have been, doing multiple concurrent research projects and trying to answer those questions. And of course, we're still, work in progress. We answered some, and we're trying to answer more. So in order to answer those research questions, data is very important. So it's crucial to gather data for us to really answer those questions. And for the ALC project, we mainly have three different kind of data sources. That is survey, classroom observation, and the interview. So for the survey, we actually adapted it from a survey that is created and developed by researchers from University of Minnesota, and they were doing a larger, project using the NSF grant, and we just borrowed some of their questions from their larger survey and, adapted them to fit our purpose. And the survey itself contains three different components. The first component, we just collect the demographic information. Um, for example, we will ask about participants' gender and which program they're from. where they're from. And also for the instructor survey, we would ask about their teaching experience. And for the, the student survey, we would ask about other information such as their degree level. And in addition to the demographic information, a major part of the survey is Likert scale multiple choice questions on two different topics. One is perception and one is frequency of activities. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, so the green block are statements pertaining to the perception of the learning space. So for example, a statement can be, the classroom increases my excitement to learn, or the classroom promotes discussion among students. And then we just ask the research participants to rate those statements on a 5-point Likert scale, from 1, which is strongly disagree, to 5, and which is strongly agree. And similarly, we have a set of questions asking about, frequency of activities that is happening in those learning spaces. As you can see here, we have some, questions asking about group work, and we have some questions asking about displaying students' work to the whole class, and then the other questions asking about consulting with the students. And those questions are rated on a 9-point Likert scale, from 1, which is never, to 9, which is more than once per class. So basically, the larger the number is, that means those activities happens more in the learning space. So actually, you're going to hear me refer to, these two set of questions constantly throughout the presentation, and sometimes I would just call them perception questions and the frequency questions. And in addition to the perception questions and the frequency questions, we also have some open-ended questions towards the end of the survey. That is very generic. So basically, we just ask about what do they like or not like about the learning space, and what are their overall thoughts. So besides survey, we also do classroom observation. So for that, it's usually just me and one of my, research assistants going to the class, and we would video and audio tape the class session, and of course with the permission from the instructor and the students. And we will also take notes for the session, just to triangulate our data collection. And besides classroom observation, we also do interviews. Sometimes they can be quite informal. So it would be something like, for example, like I noticed something interesting when I was observing the class, and I tried to clarify it with the instructor or the students. So I would just approach them during the break or after the class just to, get it clarified. So those are quite informal. But sometimes we also schedule a session with the instructors or the students, over the Zoom or in person, and we will prepare a list of questions we want to go through, but at the same time, we will improvise based on where the conversation is going. So those are more formal and semi-structured interviews. So those are the three sources of, data we have for the ALC research project. And here's just overview, mostly on the survey part. So as you can see, ever since fall 2021, we have collected about 2,000 responses from both instructors and students. And as you can see in the middle, I have a dividing line, orange dividing line. And the reason is that, so part of our research focus has shifted a little bit after 2023. We're trying to do more of a, comparison between ALC and non-ALC in terms of perception and the frequency. And before 2023, we would actually send out multiple surveys throughout the semester. And these surveys are not required to complete. So there are some instances where the students may, just complete one survey, but not the other. So it really poses a challenge when we try to track and compare the data statistically. Um, and so in order to answer our renewed research questions, we sort of changed the data collection methods, and we also revised the survey itself. So right now what we do is we would only send out one survey per semester to classes where it happens in one of the active learning classrooms on campus. And we would ask about their thoughts and experience with ALC, but in the same survey, we would also asking about their thoughts and experience with traditional classrooms, with from their prior experience. So in this way, we're able to actually compare ALC and non-ALC statistically. And after we collect the data, it's very important to clean the data for either for statistical analysis or for qualitative analysis. And it's a very important step. Sometimes can be boring, but it's very useful. So here's just an example how we may approach the data. As I said earlier, for the survey data, the first component is the demographic information. So as you can see here, it's for one of the projects. So basically, we just categorized different programs into two different categories, STEM majors and also humanities majors. And we assign a value for each of them. And then the second one here, it's about teaching experience from the instructor survey. So basically, we would rate them on a 4-point Likert scale and assign their value that way. And then on the left side of the screen, it's actually corresponds to the top part actually corresponds to the perception questions I mentioned earlier. So it's on a 5-point Likert scale, and then the frequency question is on a 9-point Likert scale. And on the right part of the screen is a snapshot from the statistical software's data. It's a code book, so basically give you an overview of what kind of data we have here. So as you can see on the top part is the demographic information, and the middle part is the perception and the frequency questions on ALC, and then we have some for non-ALC. And the second column is just the observations, which means how many valid responses we have for each of the items here. And then this column here is mean scores, and then we have a range of values. For example, for those perception questions, it's usually 1 through 5, but as you can see, for some of them, it's actually like this one here is 2 through 5. That means nobody picked a strongly disagree for that statement. So just trying to give you a sense of what it looks like in different statistical package. And then, this is another example of a different research project, and we use the SPSS to analyze the data. And as you can see, we didn't really, assign any values for a lot of the variables here because they're not the focus of that projects. But then we assign values for some others, like, gender and, other things. So it really, like the data cleaning process really depends a lot on what you're trying to do with the specific research projects. And now I want to give you a few examples of what our data analysis actually looks like. And those are like real examples. Either we presented somewhere or it could be a work in progress. So this one here, we presented at a 2023 POD research conference. And for this one, we're trying to investigate the connection between students' perception of active learning classrooms, as well as the frequency of activities in those learning spaces. And we have a snapshot of the poster we presented back then. And so basically, we ran some descriptive stats and correlational analysis trying to, find more about the distribution of the data set to see if there's any outliers. And we also checked the multi-collinearity. And then we conducted some logistic regression analysis, trying to figure out the connection between the two variables I just mentioned. And what we found from this study, what we found from the data analysis is students' perception towards ALC is positively associated with the frequency of activities happening in those classrooms. And also the adjusted logistic regression shows that prior experience with ALC does not always warrant more active learning happening in the current ALC. And we suspect it might be because the way we define the question. So basically in the survey, we only ask if students have prior experience with ALC. We don't know if this kind of experience is positive or negative. So that just tells us like in the future, if we want to, learn more from that perspective, from the prior experience, we may need to define the question, in a different way. And here is another example. So this one we presented at the 2023 AERA, which is the American Educational Research Association conference. And for this specific project, we're trying to compare students' perception towards ALC and non-ALCs. So the statements we focused on for this project is, you can see them at the left side of the screen. So because of the data set we used here is not normally distributed, which is why we conducted a Mann-Whitney U test. And the test results showed that students had a more positive views towards ALC on many of the statements here, but then for some of the statements, they have mixed feelings. And at the same time, in the same study, we're also trying to, divide the surveys depending on whether the instructors actually encourage and enact active learning in those learning spaces. Because from my experience working with them, sometimes the instructors were just assigned to active learning classrooms without even knowing, those spaces are for active learning purposes, so might not so there's a possibility that they might not do any active learning in those spaces. So we tried to divide the surveys that way, and we would try to you know, um, look at the perception between these two different groups. So one group with active learning happening, and the other group without active learning happening. So what we found is that when active learning really happened, the students' perception appeared to be much more positive. So it's definitely a very limited results, but it also suggests to us it should be the combination of the space and also, appropriate pedagogical options that make the whole thing work. It's not just one, it's always the combination. And here's another example. It's a more recent project that we're actually working on right now. So you probably remember me saying the survey is adapted from a larger survey set from University of Minnesota. And we were actually talking with the researcher over there. And eventually we found out that so those specific statements that we are using in our survey, so those and also, the questions about about the frequency, they actually the researcher over there, they actually never validated those specific survey. So they actually encourage us to validate this survey and making sure the survey is accurately measuring what they intend to measure. And it could be helpful not only for us, but also for education researchers out there who's doing studies on learning spaces. So we took their advice and we did an EFA based on 150 responses from students we collected for that semester. And what we found is that we extracted two different factors from the 10 statements here. So half of the statements actually focus more on the engagement aspect of learning, and the other half of the items, they focus more on the effect of students, and that means, students' feelings and the emotions. So the next step for us is to collect more data, and we intend to do a CFA, which is a confirmatory factor analysis, just to confirm the results from the EFA we did earlier. Um, Actually, Dr. Tina Bate and I, and also one of my colleagues from University at Buffalo, we're going to, present this as a work in progress in the 2025 AERA conference. That's just in 2 months. So hopefully we can get some good feedbacks and we can bring them back and to further improve, our study. And eventually we want to, it's our plan to publish this results somewhere. So the examples I shared so far, they lean more towards the quantitative side of analysis, but we also do qualitative analysis for our research projects as well. And sometimes we use the qualitative analysis to support, corroborate with the statistical results. And sometimes we just present those qualitative responses and the results by themselves. So here is just an example from an internal meeting that I actually just presented just last week. And this is one of the slides from that presentation. So basically what we did as a research team is that we look at all the qualitative responses, and we try to do inductive coding. So basically, we will try to identify any patterns from the data set, and we try to see if there is any similarities or disparities from different responses from different people, and we try to come up with different codes and then group codes into themes, and then we just check with each other and eventually come up with a themes that we think it's interesting and also emergent from the data set that we want to share with different people. So for example, here on are two of the very interesting themes that are emerging from the data set. One is engagement. So as you can see from the student quotation that they described how engagement is a very essential and important part in active learning classrooms. They also described how it may benefit their learning. And the second one, actually, I find very interesting because when we ask those, questions, we're not specific about the furnitures or anything, but they actually paid attention to the furnitures. And in this case, it's chairs. So as you see, one student said that the chairs are so comfy, I get too comfortable. And the other one said that the comfy chairs allow me to feel comfortable and excited to learn for the day. So those quotations, those data just showed us, students are actually paying attention to the chairs and its impact on their learning process. So those are the examples I want to share with you today, and I also want to briefly talk about the next steps because data is a very important part for our project and for our decision making. And in the future, we definitely want to collect more data across existing and the new ALCs on campus. And we definitely want to focus more on learning outcomes. So we will start collecting variables such as a student's grade. And in that way, we may be able to, conduct some statistical analysis really showing, the relationship between the active learning space, the active learning teaching strategies, and the learning performance. And also, I want to more closely look at the active learning teaching strategies being enacted in those learning spaces, because I believe they will provide us with a more nuanced explanations in terms of, what can be some of the effective pedagogical options in those active learning spaces. So that's all I want to share with you today. I want to thank you for your attention and thank you for coming to my session today. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask here or reach out to me. Or if you have any questions about our journal, you're also more than welcome to reach out to me. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, so thank you for showing us how data can be used in research, Dr. Kong. It was a very informative presentation. And thank you everyone again, and we'll see you at the other Love Data Week sessions. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.